Welcome to the Fierce and Fit Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Clarice 𝙒𝙩𝙨, a holistic health coach dedicated to helping women over 40 achieve their fittest, fiercest selves. Each week, we'll dive deep into the unique challenges of menopause, including belly fat, weight gain, muscle building, hormonal imbalances, and more. These episodes are recorded live from my free Facebook group, Fierce Women Sculpting Powerful Bodies and Champion Mindsets. Be sure to check the link in the show notes to join our incredible community and access free content, challenges, and resources designed just for you. This is part of the community, Fierce Women Sculpting Powerful Bodies and Champion Mindsets. So today's live topic is belly fat, brain fog, and cellulite after 40. What's actually normal and what's not. Now, I only chose 3 of the top ones to put in that title, but we're going to go through a number of symptoms very common to menopausal women. So we're going to talk about what's normal and what's not normal for menopausal women or after 40, perimenopause, menopause. And we're going to touch on 6 areas. We're going to touch on periods, if you still have your periods, weight gain or belly fat, hot flashes or night sweats, mood swings and brain fog, low libido and vaginal health, which is important, and muscles, cellulite, and body composition. Okay, so we're going to touch on 6 areas today: periods, weight gain, belly fat, hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, brain fog, low libido, vaginal health, muscles, cellulite, and body composition. You're like, that's more than 6, but they're categorized in 6. Okay, so if I just mentioned anything here in the periods, weight gain, belly fat, hot flashes, night sweats, all of these, what do you guys experience that you feel like has changed in your body? Like, is it mood swings? I know someone just told me actually mood swings and anxiety and depression, maybe low libido, maybe muscles, cellulite. Put below, what do you feel like you struggle with in these 6 areas that I'm going to go through. So let's get into it. We're going to dive into these like 6 areas I talked about, okay, and what is normal and not normal. So as I go through this, we're going to dive deep into the science in a few key areas. But when I talk about what's normal and what's not, I'd like for you guys to identify, do you feel like you're normal or not normal in this area? So I want you to put it below and identify that, okay? Okay, so let's start first with periods. Now, I know not everybody still has periods, but there are the perimenopause group that is 40, 50 that still may have periods, yeah? So what's normal is, as you go into perimenopause, having maybe shorter cycles or maybe lighter or heavier, where it kind of looks different, like it's like something a lot lighter or something a lot heavier. That's normal, okay, as you go into perimenopause. And typically in perimenopause, you will find that you have longer times between your periods. This is normal as you age into your 40, 50. There's just longer periods of time between your periods. What is not normal, okay, is if you are experiencing incredibly like heavy periods that are like, honestly, like flooding, like, you know, soaking through within a couple hours, that's not normal, yeah? And I'm going to explain why that isn't, but if you have that in perimenopause, this can indicate a number of things. So that's why I want you guys to tell me as I go through each point, if you feel like it's normal or not normal in that. So right now we're talking about periods. Also with periods, it won't be normal if you might have like bleeding after sex, or spotting. If you are after menopause already and you don't have periods anymore, but you still are getting like a little bit of spotting, that can be odd. So it's like the abnormal is like if there's excessive bleeding, or like, you know, like I said, bleeding after sex, where it's not normal like that, that is indicating something. Let's talk about why. So when there is extremely heavy bleeding, or let's just say like unusual kinds of times where it is bleeding, it can indicate estrogen dominance, potentially a sluggish liver detox pathway, which we're going to get into. So your liver is not detoxing properly, or there is fibroids often underlying that heavy bleeding. And I know a lot of women who come to me do struggle with fibroids, okay? So this is quite common, okay? So let's go through a little bit of each thing about estrogen dominance, about, you know, sort of the liver detox pathways and all of that. So in terms of estrogen dominance, you might have estrogen dominance, and you can let me know. You can put it below if you feel you are. It doesn't mean that you have too much estrogen. The thing is, we all know as you age, your estrogen is going to decline, and it just means that your estrogen in relation to progesterone is going to be imbalanced, in that there's too much estrogen in relation to progesterone. So what do I mean by that? Is that as you move into menopause and you do not ovulate anymore, you're ovulating less, this will mean that progesterone is going to drop off significantly, because progesterone is produced in that ovulation phase, right? So what's happening is, if your progesterone drops too fast compared to your estrogen, or there's a big difference, even if your estrogen is not super high. So this is kind of why I also say sometimes with testing and things like that, be careful, because you could be normal in estrogen level, but like it's the difference of the two, if that makes sense. So it's in relation to progesterone. So if your estrogen is too high in relation to progesterone, you are going to experience these following things. And if you do experience it, then let me know below. Maybe you do have estrogen dominance. So you will have heavy or prolonged periods. You might have more breast tenderness. You might have more mood swings and anxiety when you're estrogen dominant. You'll have a lot of bloating and water retention. That is a lot of clients and a lot of women, okay? So many women are like, I'm bloated, I feel puffy. So bloating and water retention, weight gain in the hips and thighs, and fibroids and endometriosis flares. I think at least 40% of the women I've talked to so far have had endometriosis and fibroids, or if not more. So it's really quite common. So if I just named off any of these symptoms and you feel like, yeah, like I have these things, maybe you're estrogen dominant. Maybe you could put estrogen dominant, or maybe estrogen dominance, especially if it's a number of this, like mood swings, belly, bloat, fibroids, like that all together could mean that there is estrogen dominance. So you could put estrogen dominance below if you feel that is you. So estrogen dominance is one, okay? The other thing I want to talk about with the periods being irregular or abnormal, like in the not normal, like very heavy bleeding or bleeding at weird times, right? Like I said, like after sex or things like that, it doesn't make sense. Or like you're already post-menopause, you haven't had a period, and suddenly you're still spotting through. These are the things you want to be careful. So one, it could be estrogen dominance. And then two, it could be your liver detox pathway. So we're going to talk about the liver detox. And I was just about to say, I know Armenia did my BioRevive system. I think Kat Wilson did my BioRevive system. In that particular system, I talked about liver detoxification. Here, you're going to learn why this is extremely important, okay? So your liver detoxification pathway has two phases, phase 1 and 2. Okay, so estrogen, especially estradiol and E2, is metabolized and excreted in the liver in two main steps. So there's a phase 1 step called hydroxylation. Hydroxylation is a process where the estrogen gets converted into metabolites, like broken down, okay? There's different pathways, it's kind of sciencey, but I'll say it. It's C1P1A1 pathway, C1P1B1 pathways, and it's dictated by these kind of genes. But when this hydroxylation pathway happens, there are different outcomes that could happen depending on if you break it down properly, okay? If you break down estrogen into 2-OH, it's good. It means your body is doing well in this breakdown hydroxylation process. So if you have 2-OH estrogen, it's a good thing. Now, if you break it down into 4-OH, these are just different forms, okay? This can form DNA damaging ketones, and it can cause a lot of damage in your body. And if you break it down into something called, so there's 2-OH, 4-OH, and 16-OH, this is linked to more growth of fibroids and breast tissue density. And you know what that means? That could mean potentially breast cancer. Okay, so your goal, or what we want, is we want the favorite 2-OH pathway, which is done by the CYP1A1 pathway. Okay, so I know people are going to be like, well, all that's very sciencey. Like, how am I going to know? I am going to talk about testing in a bit, so stay with me. But if you want your phase 1 to be better in hydroxylation, in liver detox, there is a number of things that's really important. I'm not going to get into everything, but I'm going to explain a few things. First of all, I mentioned before the importance of fiber, and a very important part of cruciferous vegetables. There's the certain pathways in your gut system that really helps with estrogen detoxification, as well as the metabolites that we're talking about. So really learning to make sure you have enough fiber, and this is why I always talk about the way you combine food is extremely important. How you eat is extremely important. A green tea is another really good one, just because of some of the compounds that are within it. And then there's a number of supplements that you can take. Like I said, today I'm not going to get into all of it. I'm just going to call it the menopausal supplement stack, because it comes up multiple times throughout this live that there's different things you could take, but it is important to talk with a professional. So this is why I'm not going to go through it in detail, but there's certain supplements as a menopausal woman you want to ensure you have to increase the detoxification process. Again, there is a certain supplement stack that if you take certain vitamins, certain things together, or kind of in that conjunction, it will help with your detoxification pathway. We're going to talk about phase 2 of the liver detox pathway. Okay, so there is hydroxylation first, which is breaking down estrogen into its metabolites. The phase 2 of liver detox is methylation process. This is where the estrogen metabolites are methylated, neutralized, and prepped for excretion through the liver. Okay, this occurs through a COMT enzyme. It's COMT enzyme. Okay, it's short for a very long name. The COMT gene, okay, is very important for the speed of neutralizing and helping you kind of excrete this, estrogen out. Okay, so there are some people who have a slower COMT variant, meaning the methylation process of the estrogen occurs slower. So if you have a slower COMT variant, this can cause estrogen byproducts to linger. And if estrogen byproducts are lingering, or we call them estrogen recycling, if you recycle estrogen back into your system, it's not good. Okay, this is where I say, like, you don't want dirty estrogen entering back your body, and it's funny because of course we want more estrogen, but as you age, but you don't want old estrogen. I said it before, it's like having dirty socks enter back your body. It's kind of like, gross thinking, right? Like, you don't really want the estrogen going back, recycling back. So the problem is, if you don't get rid of estrogen well and you don't recycle it well, or if you have a COMT gene that is slower, then this is going to cause estrogen byproducts to linger and have this kind of buildup effect. The buildup effect is what's going to cause inflammation or symptoms, the inflammation kind of symptoms that you feel. Okay, so if you're like dealing with like more inflammation and all of that, this could be because of the phase 2 where you cannot get rid of it fast enough. So in this phase 2 COMT gene kind of talk about the excretion process, there is a number of things you can do. Again, I don't want to get into too many things because depending on your profile, the way you combine or what you combine is different. And I don't want to be in that position where you're just randomly hearing from a live. I need to talk to you, or we need to have more of a discussion. But just like some things to think about. Everyone may know Bs are super important. Vitamin Bs and specific B12s are really important to the methylation process. A lot of aging women do become deficient in B12, particularly if you're not very good with eating protein, which is my next point, is actually having really good amino acids and the right amounts of protein is going to be extremely important for the methylation process. So you want to ensure that you really understand about, yes, including protein rich things in your food, but as I always say, not all protein are made equal. I think I mentioned last week there's this protein craze where people go crazy
buying protein shakes, protein bars, and I'm not a fan of that. So I don't want this to become like, hey, I'm going to go get all this protein. We really need to look at the type of protein, the quality of the protein, and what's happening. Because if you take in protein powders or things that are at the root is still going to cause more inflammation. What did I just mention? That estrogen recycling, if it's poor, will increase inflammation in your body. So a lot of people think that by eating more protein, they're going to maybe help the muscle, help this situation here about methylation process, but it may not if your protein understanding is not there, or the amount or the quantity or the quality is all super important. So if you want to understand more about protein quantity, quality, that type of thing, protein, you can put protein below. So the two processes of liver detox, okay, hydroxylation and then the methylation process, if you don't if that pathway is not good, if your liver detox pathway is not good, this is where it could lead to those, periods or odd symptoms or inflammation coming up. Okay, so that's kind of the point on that. A little bit about the testing. There's a lot behind this, but like in terms of the testing and all of that. So you can do a number of tests. You might have heard of the Dutch test, which is one of the gold standards to test for, like things I'm talking about hormones and estrogen metabolites and things like that. The Dutch test is a very gold standard. You can have DNA testing. There's a lot of different DNA test things out there because for example, the COMT gene is a gene. It's a gene. So it's like testing for your DNA can also help. Another thing is, having your hormone panels done, your blood work done can too, but blood work is a little bit limited. Blood work can only test for certain things. I mentioned this before where, for example, it may test for T4 before it's converted to T3. It can test for levels that are not fully there yet. Whereas when you do like full on panels, they will give you a lot more information. And I know a number of my clients get tested and things like that. So just keeping that in mind. And as well, with kind of this whole estrogen part, probiotics again, it comes back to like the gut, fiber, all that type of stuff can really, really help this process as well. Those of you, again, in my BioRevive system know I recommend a really, really good probiotic. Your whole gut system really can influence how you manage your menopause symptoms, okay? So just some things, like I said, again, if you want me to go more in detail, you can put the supplement stack below, like I said. As well, one more thing. So I talked about Dutch test can be one. Your DNA testing could be another one. You can also do GI mapping as well as stool tests to test for some of these things. So because people always ask me, okay, you tell us all this, but how do we test for it? So just letting you know, okay? We're going to move into the second thing here. So we're going to talk about weight gain and belly fat. So how many of you find yourself gaining weight or having belly fat? How many of you? So weight gain and belly fat. So let's talk about what's normal. As you go into perimenopause and menopause, some fat redistribution to your waist is normal. So kind of slightly increasing in your weight to your hip ratio. It does typically happen, okay? Like it's like kind of a normal process of estrogen dropping. When your estrogen drops, again, it has to do with ratio, okay? So the ratio of estrogen to testosterone, estrogen is higher. So because estrogen is higher, my fault. Sorry, estrogen drops. Sorry, it's the opposite. Estrogen drops, testosterone is higher. So ever look at a guy who has a beer belly, a gut, is because that testosterone is higher. So it pushes fat into the belly area. So with the estrogen loss, you are going to see a little bit redistribution to belly fat. So, but what is not normal? Okay, so let's talk about this because this is one of the hottest topics about fat and belly fat and all sorts of things, even for guys who tell me they need to lose their gut sometimes, okay? So what's not normal is if you have rapid weight gain despite eating clean. So I've talked to a number of my clients. I remember Claudia, she is from Mexico. She was one of my clients. Claudia. So she gained, I think 15 pounds within 2 months or something like that. Like it was rapid, it was fast. And so if you're experiencing rapid weight gain despite clean eating, you need to look at something is going on, right? Also, what's not normal is bloating, puffiness, and stalled fat loss, even when you're exercising. Okay, this is really common. A lot of my clients say they eat healthy, they say they go to the gym, but yet they're still bloated, they're still puffy, they feel like anything they do is still not working. Okay, I think I just talked to someone this morning about it. So if you have rapid weight gain despite eating clean, if you're bloated or puffy or stalled fat loss, even if you're trying to go to the gym, all this type of stuff, it's not normal. Okay, so identify for yourself, put it down here. Are you normal or not normal in the sense of the symptoms? Okay, I'm not saying you as a person, but the symptoms. Okay, is it normal or not normal? So put it below. Like, do you have normal, just a little bit of belly fat gain, or not normal? You feel like you always have, it's just gaining so fast, you don't know what's going on. So what is going on with this in terms of the science insight of why it's not normal? Okay, let's talk about some science insights. So the loss of estrogen reduces, lipolysis, the fat burning, and it increases insulin resistance, especially for visceral fat. Okay, so your body, will become less and less able to break those fat molecules apart, and more insulin resistant, meaning it's going to insulin resistance means it doesn't respond to the sugar that is trying to get into your cells, but on a kind of further pathway, it means it holds on to fat. It holds on to more belly fat. Okay. So where does this kind of worsen is if you have also really high cortisol and poor sleep or stress management. Okay. So this is a lot of people. Some people, do very well with sleep, but really poorly with stress. And some people say they are okay with stress, but they don't sleep well. Yeah. So if you don't have poor sleep and stress management, this is going to further exacerbate sort of the weight gain, the belly fat that's already naturally happening a little bit, right? Remember I said there's a little bit, but it's going to become much more and become abnormal if things are influencing it, like cortisol spikes, poor sleep, poor stress, as well as your glucose uptake. I guess that's part of insulin, but your glucose uptake is not good. It's part of insulin resistance, but if your glucose uptake is not good. So another thing is about DNA, okay? We're going to come into the DNA part. There are DNA variations in a few genes, the FTO gene, as well as the PPAR gamma gene and the IRS1 gene. That sounds like IRS for the US people. Sorry. Sorry, we don't want to deal with the IRS, but IRS1 gene. Okay. So these genes all influence like the fat storage and insulin sensitivity in midlife. So let's break down these gene variants to better understand this, because this relates to belly fat. Okay, so the FTO gene is the fat mass and obesity associated gene, the FTO gene, okay? This particular gene functions in appetite regulation, energy balance, and fat storage. So it plays a key role in all of this, okay? There are some variations in this FTO gene. One of them is a very, very long gene, but if you want to know, it's RS9939609A, this specific gene code. If you have this specific gene, it will cause you to have increased hunger signals, decrease fullness signals, so you're going to feel hungry all the time. And typically people who have this gene variant will have higher BMI, body fat, not just BMI, but body fat percentage, okay? So if you particularly have an FTO gene that may have certain variation, you may find that you are going to hold on to fat a lot more stubbornly, okay? And so what can we do, right? So this is kind of coming back to this, what can we do? So one, I always talk about this, is you have to strength train. And, I once said that muscle and strength training is the elixir for aging. Yeah, it is the one thing that is going to help you preserve your body, your hormones, your life. okay? So you need to strength train. This actually really works a lot with that FTO gene, even if you have the variant that could mean it's not as easy for you, okay? Another thing is you have to ensure you have the right macro balance. Macro balances in your protein, in your fiber. I always say it's all, the whole thing, right? It's the protein, the carbs, the fat, how that's all balanced is going to influence that expression of the FTO gene, and as well the blood sugar regulation in terms of like to control the expression of the FTO gene. You want to ensure that you keep, of course, sugar as low as possible in your eating. Some of this you guys already kind of know, but it's important to know that how it is expressed, okay? The way you want to look at gene expression is that gene expression is like light switches, okay? You are going to be given that at birth, certain switches. But what you do in your life, in your everyday, in the things I'm talking about, will determine whether you turn on the switch or turn off the switch, which is called unlocking the DNA gene. Okay, so this is why it's very crucial that, especially as you age, you cannot just rely on just what your body naturally does. You need to, okay, I want to have better expression on my FTO gene that controls fat, it controls metabolism, controls all of this. We need to make sure that we have proper strength training. We have to really understand macro balance in your meals and proper insulin sugar control, okay? And if you're listening to this and you're not really sure about your macro balance, I encourage you to put macro balance below. One, because we have that. If you don't have it yet, we have it, I think from 2 weeks ago, the macro PowerPoint that we released. That is a good like Cole's notes on macros. So we could send that to you. You could put macros below. But also, again, I was just speaking to someone earlier today and she's telling me she got her macros from an app. Yes. And this is something I'm just going to speak because I do feel very strongly about this, is that is okay generally, but general macros are not tailored to menopausal women. And if it does not account for your hormones, and this particular individual, she'll watch the replay, was tested for her hormone profile and has dysfunction in 4 hormone profiles. I asked her where she gets her protein and calories and assignments, and she said, oh, just from the app. And this is where I always say, I said, like, but the app has no idea how to interpret the estrogen, the progesterone, the cortisol, the DHEA, the insulin, all the hormones that is impacting you. And so going off of an app is it's a disservice to yourself. If, and I want to say this with a caveat, okay? If you are really struggling, I think it's great for general. That's why people who are 20s, 30s, they're not struggling with a lot of hormone changes or massive belly fat. That's fine. It's amazing to use apps like that. They probably love it. It's great. But you have to think differently as a menopausal woman, that they cannot account for what low insulin means. What does estrogen to progesterone ratio mean? Because it's not about estrogen levels, it's about the ratio. And the ratio impacts how you think about carbs and how you think about what you need the ratio to be, right? So I would say, yes, put macro, I see macro balance there. Chiquita, I see, sorry, I'm not looking at all the things. TM McLaren will reach out to you. Kat says, my FitnessPal macros are very inaccurate, but you can customize them. Yes, Kat, you can, but this is what I mean is like by default, that's inaccurate, right? And that's the thing is then understanding the hormones and the profiling then really influences how those macros will be and better support gene expression, which is coming back to the FTO gene I'm talking about, right? And I would say, like, if you have a good functioning FTO gene, you may find that you can get away with maybe more general macros. But if you are one of those who have an FTO gene and that specific allele, or a couple of those that have a inefficiency with like the fat and the storage, you being off your macro is going to greatly affect you, right? More, you're going to gain weight faster, you're going to have belly fat faster, And so this is why I want you guys to identify for yourself, are you within the normal range for belly fat or abnormal and slash like weight gain? If you're gaining weight super fast, it's unexplained, it's a lot, and then it could be not normal, right? So you can put that below like normal or not normal. Okay, the next gene is PPARY or PPARG gene. Okay, so this particular gene is the fat cell master regulator. Okay, it functions to regulate fat storage, glucose metabolism, and insulin sensitivity. The variant is PRO12ALA. This particular variant will reduce your insulin sensitivity, and it increases your risk factor for central fat accumulation, metabolic syndrome, and sluggish fat metabolism, meaning it cannot metabolize fat efficiently. Okay, so in midlife, your insulin sensitivity is going to naturally decline anyways, right? So this natural decline, like I said, there is a little bit, just a little bit, where you are going to kind of start seeing some increase in the midsection a little bit, but it will go crazier, right? When it is like the poor gene expression of the PPARG, it will accelerate fat storage and increase inflammation, right? So again, you might have maybe a variant of it, but there are things that you can do, whether you are within the healthy range or it's not a normal range. Again, like I'll go with the general things. Of course, having lots of good omegas is super important, as well as a number of different vitamins. I've mentioned vitamin B above. There's a few other ones, again, with that menopausal supplement stack. But omegas you can get from fish, and you should have that more often than not. Maybe not necessarily just fish, but like omega-3s is really important. As well, you want to make sure that your training, okay, so I know I always repeat myself, but your training has different sections to it. So it has your regular training protocol, but you also have aspects of, like, we talked about this before, like HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Different kinds of variations of your training is really important because it influences this particular gene expression. Okay, so, and this gene expression is a fat cell regulator, right? So this is kind of why I say the word MTP, which is menopausal training protocol. So the way you train, the way you want your program to be spaced out on certain moves is really important, and is not just, go to the gym, do anything, or just follow any YouTube video, as I've mentioned before. And it isn't even just a straight bodybuilding workout program. I think that there's going to be good things to a straight bodybuilding program, but it will miss some elements if you are not cautious of it, where it influences the hormones, it influences certain gene expression. So menopausal training protocol is like putting different aspects of training into the routine to influence your hormones. Now I'm going to use Phyllis as an example because she's on here. And right now I'm slowly working on a program because I'm getting feedback from her on certain things. She's 75. She has had multiple health things. Her knee is needing replacement. She has a prolapse in her pelvic floor. There's a lot of things happening with her. So you have to remember, like, the MTP protocol is like, yes, you need certain elements, but at the end of the day, you need to look at how the exercise is going to influence your hormones, and is it going to spike your cortisol more? And of course, I just talked to Phyllis, and she mentioned she's feeling like this and very sore, and she feels this way. And I was asking her about her lifestyle and what she does. She lives on a farm, all this type of stuff. So why am I sharing this? So the reason why I'm sharing this is because MTP protocol is about taking into account the way you live and like what is going on to determine where the variation of the movements and how you need to train. What Phyllis has to do is going to look very, very different than a 50-year-old Cat Wilson. Yeah, Cat Wilson probably can take higher levels of HIIT training and higher levels of different things in her training, whereas Phyllis at 75 cannot, but we still need to find a way to get her to excrete the right hormone profiling with her workouts. So this is why MTP, I always say MTP, menopausal training protocol, because as you study more into it, you'll understand that movement as you age will influence hormones in your body. And as a menopausal woman, you have to understand where that's coming in. Are you going to the gym and causing your cortisol to spike? Are you going to the gym and influencing, let's just say, this particular gene coding, PPAR-Y or PPAR-G, this particular gene coding, if you're not working out properly, you're impacting the ability of how well your fat can metabolize fat in your body, right? And so there's going to be a DNA coding, and then there is the DNA expression. So that's what I'm trying to say is, yes, there's going to be a base where, okay, maybe that's your genetics. You might be slower at fat metabolism, but how do we actually influence the gene expression of that, right? So the next gene coding is IRS1 gene, which stands for insulin receptor substrate 1. This insulin receptor gene is critical for insulin signaling. So it helps your cells respond to insulin. Why is this important? Anybody here pre-diabetic or diabetic? Because if you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, I know even some of the guys that follow me have messaged me that they're pre-diabetic or they are diabetic. Okay, so actually guys struggle quite a bit with this. Aging men struggle quite a bit with diabetes as well. So why is this IRS1 gene important? Is if your insulin does not respond well, it means you cannot regulate blood sugar properly. And if you cannot regulate blood sugar properly, you're going to have problems with your blood glucose level, right? It's going to stay high, which is not healthy. And there's a lot of things that could cause atherosclerosis, hardening of your arteries, but more so, it will push the signal to have belly fat in the middle, right? So your insulin response is extremely important. So this particular gene, IRS1 gene, is extremely important. So there is, okay, I'm talking about variants. There is a certain variant that also can affect you more to be insulin impaired a little bit, okay? So this variant is very long, again, but if you want to know, it's RS2943641, this allele, certain gene variant. This particular gene variant, if you have that in your gene coding, it will cause impaired insulin signaling. It will cause elevated fasting insulin and increase waist circumference if you have this particular gene coding. This gene in midlife, if that's what you are tend towards, it will tip it really fast towards fat gain, fatigue, stubborn cravings, unstable blood sugar. So this is kind of why I said what's normal, what's not normal is that's why I said, like, if you find yourself like gaining weight really fast, it's unexplained, or it's like it's like in a very short period of time you gained a lot of weight, or you feel suddenly like really off, it could mean something is off, right? This is kind of helping you understand this a little bit more. So regardless of whether you have this gene coding or not, you want to understand better how to control insulin, IRS1 gene. So in order to control this better, you have to learn how to optimize insulin. Okay, so this is through your lifestyle habits. How do you optimize insulin and insulin levels is largely, but not only, due to nutrition. So you have to understand the way you eat your food. So how you combine your food. If you are just randomly grabbing an apple, or, I don't know, I mean, this is actually not bad, okay? But I just think of Sonia, if you're on here, she's running out the door, so she grabbed salmon. So she ate salmon. That is actually healthy, but we were just talking about it yesterday. I was like, okay, hold on. Where is everything else with that? Where is all your combinations in this, Because yes, I have to admit, I told her salmon is healthier than obviously grabbing McDonald's. I'm very happy for her. But at the same time, notice I said earlier, is that I had said like certain things like your fiber is super important, and I haven't gotten to certain parts, but like where fats and the way it works with your hormone system, and fat it connects with steroids, like the steroids in your body, which is how hormones are created. So if you're not having that, salmon does have fat, but I'm just giving an example. When things are not balanced, and last week I spoke about carbs and carbs affecting thyroid conversion. If you missed my last week's live, you could put, what was my last week's live? I don't know, just put live. We'll know. Put live and we can tag you on last week's live, because I spoke about carbs affecting thyroid conversion. So you need carbs. So this is kind of what I mean is you have to really learn how to eat that macro balanced meal to optimize insulin. And yes, this has a huge part to do with carbs. Yes, because insulin relates to carbs, but it's not the only thing. It's understanding the whole scope of it: protein, carbs, and fat, different types of carbs, that type of thing. So if you want to learn how to optimize insulin better, put optimize insulin better. So that's one thing, is the macro balance of optimizing insulin. Lifestyle habits like sleep is extremely important. The better you sleep, the better your insulin sensitivity improves. Okay, so sleep quality, how you prepare for sleep. And then another part of how to help yourself in this area is weight training and taking regular walks, and that's a pretty standard recommendation, but just understanding insulin sensitivity is connected also to your movement, to regular movement, to daily movement, to walking, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, we're moving into the third symptom. Okay, so that whole big section about like the gene codings and all of this stuff was about belly fat and weight gain. Okay, that was the second symptom. The first one was periods. Second was belly fat and weight gain. This third symptom I'm going to talk about is hot flashes and night sweats. Okay, hot flashes and night sweats. So anybody here have hot flashes or night sweats? Put below. Hot flashes and night sweat. If you have any of that, put it below. So what's normal and what's not normal? So normal, as you go into perimenopause or menopause, is occasionally having some warm flushes. It is normal. Like an occasional night sweat is even okay, because your hormones are fluctuating. I know I've talked to many women who says, yeah, like occasionally, but it doesn't happen that often, right? There's some, and then there's an opposite group who says, oh my gosh, like you don't know, like I wake up drenched in sweat. And yeah, like, so it depends on which group you are. So if you're kind of in the occasional, just once in a while, could be normal. Okay. Not normal is having like daily hot flashes, and what I spoke about, like night sweats that like disrupt your sleep, or you wake up and you're just in like a massive pool of sweat is not normal. Okay. So what does this scientifically mean? So let's go into the science insight. So hot flashes are triggered by hypothalamic instability when estrogen drops too low. Okay, so your hypothalamus is in your brain in the back here. So the thermoregulatory centers become oversensitive due to hormonal shifts. So your neurotransmitter like GABA and serotonin, if they start to deplete, you're going to have kind of poor sleep. You're going to have more hot flashes with some of the neurotransmission, okay, and loss of vasodilation control. So when like the hypothalamus controls a lot of things, when this part starts to become unstable, not only does it influence neurotransmitters, but it influences like the way your body is pushing blood through your body. And this is kind of why like the vasodilation, all of this type of stuff can influence not blood pressure. It can influence like hot sweat, night sweats, the temperature control of your body. Okay. So what can you do, okay, in regards to sort of like this hot flashes? This is kind of why I want to bring it up, because like, I've just heard a lot of people say their doctors are kind of like, oh, it's normal, you're aging, right? But I want to help you guys understand, okay, what is considered normal and what is not considered normal. If you're having really intense hot flashes, that's not normal. Yeah. So you need to get that looked at, get some help, talk to someone about the hormones and what's going on in your body. So what can you do? So I mentioned a few of these already, like omegas is super important. Having good gut liver detox. So again, really understanding how to have better gut health, gut detoxification, controlling what's happening in your gut. I mentioned probiotics earlier. This is all really important. I mean, those who follow me a long time know that like gut health itself is like a massive science and is like basically a separate medical field in gastroenterology. Like it's huge, right? Like everything, like so many things come and happen in your gut. So you have to learn how to take care of your gut really, really well. When I talk about estrogen recycling, there's something called a beta glucuronidase. Okay, this particular enzyme, if it's kind of off and it doesn't help you, it doesn't function properly, you're not going to recycle that estrogen properly, like I spoke about above. And this comes from dysbiosis. If your microbiome is off, you will experience more gut issues, bloating, retention, but like over time, you will impact, the signals of like your hypothalamus. These neurotransmitters can become like hot flashes more frequent. So the people who have talked to me that experience really frequent hot flashes, I say it's a lot with your food and what you're eating and probably not managing inflammation in your body. A lot of times, because again, coming back to gut health, you're inputting things in your body that is inflaming your system. So this is something you want to be careful of. And this is really a big focus of my BioRevive system, although in all my programs we focus on it. But BioRevive itself is like more centered on gut health, right? So if you want to learn more about gut health or BioRevive, you can put that below gut health or BioRevive. And then coming back to this point is if you have really intense hot flashes, it's not normal. So you have to stop and step back and be like, it's not just because I'm in menopause or I'm perimenopause. You need to get some help to fix the situation in your body. So the next symptom is mood swings and brain fog. Okay, mood swings and brain fog. Anybody here experience mood swings or brain fog? This one, believe it or not, because obviously this is my area of research, brain fog is Googled so many times. It's one of the most Googled outside of belly fat, but it is really highly searched because apparently people are experiencing a lot of brain fogs these days. Do you experience brain fog? So a lot of people, they forget things, or like halfway through the sentence, they forget. Do you experience that? Because that can indicate brain fog, something's happening, or irritability, mood swings. Put it below if you feel like you experience that. So what is normal? Okay, so there's normal. So like, I mean, 𝘽𝙚 is beautiful and 30 and she still experiences it, right? So I want to talk about where is some normalcy in this. If you know Clarice really well, like for me, I work really hard and I sometimes don't sleep always the best. Even I know Debbie laughs at me, 𝘽𝙚 laughs at me. But I really improve over these number of years, especially as you're aging, you realize, okay, gotta take care of your hormones. But when I was in my 20s, I experienced brain fog so much, you won't believe. So it doesn't mean that just because you're older, experiencing brain fog is the only thing. But because I know you guys are going to laugh, but Clarice in her 20s would only sleep like 2 hours, 3 hours. Like I just am a driver. I work hard. I train hard for everything. This is why I teach this, because I went through a period in my life where I thought everything had to be harder. Everything had to be, you work out harder, right, Kat? We talked about this. You got to work out harder. Everything has to be like this hard. And I just was like, it just threw my body into all sorts of hormonal chaos when it's like, really, working harder does not mean that it's going to help you. What we need is we need to understand our body. It's why I speak about this, because in some ways I've gone through it. I've had a lot of brain fog. My brain was be like, what did I just talk about? And I didn't realize it was because I wasn't understanding I had to eat proper carbs. I wasn't understanding I had to eat proper macros. Everything I'm teaching you I've gone through in parts of my life where I know like it like sucks when you don't understand your nutrition and you don't understand and you just think you have to work harder, you know? What's normal? So normal is mild irritability, trouble focusing under stress. That's normal. So if you're stressed or you have a high project coming, this is normal. Sometimes you are going to experience some brain fog or you've missed a night of sleep. It is normal. You are going to experience a little bit of this, mild. Okay. What's not normal is if you have rage episodes. I think I think you told me, or one person said like, I suddenly just get angry. So if you have rage episodes, panic attacks, crying without a clear cause, suddenly forgetting words, forgetting names, where you put things daily, that's not normal. Okay. So if this is happening to you, suddenly you're getting angry, suddenly you're crying, suddenly you're blah, you know, all sorts of things. I'm saying more intense. I'm not saying the occasional. Of course, everybody occasionally might get stressed. Like, it's a long story, but when I was at the airport in Turkey, it was crazy. Like, I missed my plane. They delayed me here. I was like, I'm just feeling very overwhelmed. Like, if normal life things like that is normal, but if you like are like just it's often happening like rage or panic attacks, this is not normal. Okay, so what's not normal is what I just spoke about. So let's talk about some science behind this, okay? So what affects brain fog? Let's talk about this. Estrogen and progesterone affect dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, okay? These are all critical neurotransmitters for focus, memory, and emotional regulation, okay? So the drop in estradiol disrupts your brain's glucose usage. So that's why as you go into menopause or perimenopause, the drop in estrogen really can mess with your brain because it's messing with your neurotransmission. This is very normal. It's almost like belly fat is at the top, but brain fog is like near the top of being Googled. Because I think a lot of women, they struggle with it or they wonder, is this normal? Is this not? So this is why I'm telling you this, right? So this drop in estrogen affects dopamine, affects serotonin, affects acetylcholine, and certain DNA markers, like what I said above, like COMT variant. The COMT had to do with your estrogen detoxification process. If you have that variant, it may mean that you will have longer metabolites from stress and different compounds. And if you have longer, again, the best way for you guys to understand, like longer garbage sitting around, like DNA metabolites sitting around, it's going to affect your neurotransmission. Because like, think about it. If you walked into a house and it's filled with garbage, you're going to take longer to get to your room, right? Because you cannot get through the garbage. There's too much blocking you, right? So, you know, so certain variants can cause the slowdown. Having the drop in estrogen can cause this brain fog and slowdown. So in terms of like, again, what you can do, because it's all with neurotransmission and stuff like that, yes, it does have to do with food and it does have to do with like, again, certain supplements and things like that. You know, a very common supplement is magnesium. There are different kinds and different forms of magnesium. But yes, there are different types of supplements that work with your neurotransmission and GABA and all of this type of stuff. So it's understanding nutrition and supplementation. So more easily, I would say you need to understand macronutrients and micronutrients for menopause. That would be like a good way of saying it, because you need both the macronutrients and the micronutrients to support, because it's not just the food, but it's the neurotransmission that you need to know how to control, right? As we keep going, if this is helping you, put it below. If you're learning something or you enjoy learning something new, put it below. I love to know what you are learning, because obviously these are higher level science. One day, Clarice, I've been looking into functional medicine. So that's an area I just love. I probably will eventually get that sort of clinical certification for functional medicine. But this area is really high science stuff. But I want you guys to understand where it's coming from, where your symptoms coming from, and what's normal, what's not, right? So to better understand it. Okay, so let's go to the next symptom. So this is an interesting one. It's libido and vaginal health, okay? And is not talked about maybe a lot, or maybe people may be embarrassed about, but these are real changes that's going to actually happen. So it might as well talk about it, right? So let's go to libido and vaginal health. So what's normal? Okay. So normal is some fluctuation in desire because of stress or sleep. That's normal. Like, you're not always going to be on, type of thing, but it is normal. A little bit of fluctuation as well. What's normal is some minor dryness. This is common in post-menopause, some vaginal dryness, because that's, because estrogen helps with lubrication, all this type of stuff. So as you drop off in that hormone, some minor dryness is normal. What is not normal is obviously if it's very painful to have sex. Honestly, I know women who are aging have told me this, and it's hard, right? Because it affects you, affects your husband, affects your significant other. So, but you're embarrassed about it, and I understand. So it's not normal. You need to get some help with that. Or if you have recurrent UTI, urinary tract infections, recurrent, okay? Like it keeps coming back. Urinary tract infection, you will feel burning sensation when you go pee, right? And you'll feel like pressure. So yes, that's not normal. And also it's not normal if you have zero interest in intimacy for months and months and months and months. Okay, so it's not normal. So then you will definitely want to look at that. Okay, so let's talk about the science behind the libido and vaginal health. Okay, so with lower estrogen means that your vaginal tissue will start to thin out. Okay, you're going to get less blood flow and lower nitric oxide in that area, which is kind of why you slightly have lower libido. Also, you will have lower testosterone as you go into perimenopause, menopause. As you know, testosterone also relates to libido. So lower testosterone, lower estrogen will really influence your sex drive, your confidence. So of course, this is things you need to consult with your doctor. But of course, yes, there are things like topical estrogen. Yes, there's hormone things that you potentially could take, but this again, you need to consult your doctor, and you have to be very careful. This is a topic I'm going to have a few weeks from now about hormone therapy. There's pros and there's cons, and there's things you have to be careful about in hormone stuff, okay? But yes, sometimes with really decreased libido, things like that, it could help a little bit if you're doing some minor hormonal things. There's also things you can kind of look at, understanding better intakes or understanding DHEA, which is the precursor hormone to estrogen, progesterone, how you can work to have better DHEA in your system. This actually, DHEA has both a nutritional base, but also working out and how you work out can influence DHEA, this hormone, as well as red light therapy has been known to help a little bit more with this situation with your vaginal health, libido, because of the tissues. It helps rebuild, decreasing inflammation. So there's a number of things that you can do to kind of help with this. But one thing I will say is at the end of the day, when you understand what's happening in your body, it's all coming down to hormones. That's why we released the hormone free PDF guide, right? We released it yesterday on Tuesday. So if you don't have our hormone PDF guide, you can put hormone below, because I believe that PDF is awesome. It's my Cole's notes of the hormone live I did back in January, and it goes into a lot of detail about each hormone. So if you want that hormone PDF, put hormone below. I bring that up because everything comes down to hormones, you see, and understanding it is one thing, but learning how to achieve hormonal optimization is another thing. I'm helping you understand what hormone imbalances is causing in your body, but learning how to balance it is going to be key. And how you achieve hormone balance, like I said, it is a number of things. But if I had to say food really quickly, it would be, food-wise, you need to know your inflammation markers. As you age, your body cannot handle inflammation. You need to know your inflammation markers. You need to know your macros, your calories, protein, carbs, and fat. You need to know it better. It's not that it's a must, because you can still live and eat without understanding your macros, but you will have a better chance of balancing your hormones instead of throwing things against the wall. I always say, like, you could live life like throwing things against the wall and hope that your hormone naturally balances, but that's usually not the case for most menopausal women unless you're very genetically gifted or you've been an athlete your whole life. But most women have to be a little bit more intentional about their hormones. So your macros is super important. And I know this is a debate with some people who don't like doing macros, but I just always say, like, the more you understand your macros, the better you're going to have control of your hormones. Okay, so you need to know your information. You got to know your macros. So you need to, so it's like quality of food, quantity of food, timing of food, the way your timing is. I always say this, right? So quality, quantity, and timing of food, and your hormones in regards to the way you work out, which was MTP protocol. So when it comes to hormone balance, it's many things together. Okay, it's many things together that you want to pay attention to help yourself in this stage of life. And so put the hormone, you can put hormone guide, or if you want to learn how to better balance hormone, then put hormone balance below. Okay, put hormone balance below. Okay, so very, very important. I would say, like, this is by far, if you can master your hormones, you basically master your aging process, you know? I would say muscle is the elixir of aging, meaning it keeps you young. But if you can master hormones, you will master your aging process. And if you can master your mind, your mindset, you master your life. You know, a lot of truth there. Think about that and write that down. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is muscle loss, cellulite, and body recomposition, or body composition. Okay, so this is a big one, so stick with me on this. So what is normal to expect when you go into perimenopause and menopause? Okay, normal is slight slowdown in muscle gain. That's normal. As you age, you're not going to gain muscle as fast, and you're going to have a little bit maybe more fat storage if nothing changes, meaning like you don't really change the way you eat, you don't change the way you work out. You will have muscle slowdown in muscle gain and a little bit of more fat storage, like I said, a little bit. What's not normal? So what's not normal is, like, if you work out all the time, like some of my clients or some of the people come to me and say, I work out 5 days a week and I'm still like fluffy, or I'm still not like tight and toned, and I just cannot tone my body. That's not normal. If you're working out that much and you're not getting a nice toned body and leaning out, you're doing something wrong. Unfortunately, it's just trying to be straight with you. Something is wrong. So if you're still not lean, you work out for 6 months, because 6 months is a good marker, you know. 6 months was when I first got into my first competition stage. So 6 months is a good time. Like, if in 3 to 6 months you're not seeing a whole lot of changes, maybe you need to get some help, right? Second thing is, what's not normal is when your cellulite worsens. Okay, so I want you to listen to this carefully. I know a lot of women deal with cellulite. If your cellulite worsens, if your cellulite is worsening and your skin is dimpling and there's a loss of like strength and curves that you used to have, that's not normal. What I want to say is a little bit of cellulite, like a little bit in women, is normal, and there's certain genes that do affect cellulite, kind of the way your skin looks. Okay, so there is some normalcy in that. But what I'm saying is, if it keeps getting worse, that you're getting more cellulite, more skin dimpling, like a lot of women along the glutes, along the thighs, and it's getting worse and worse, that isn't normal. Okay, and one of the things I would say, is okay, I recently saw a video on Instagram that says, like, this whole self-love movement is going too far. And they said, like, of course you should love your body, but if you are really overweight or have a lot of fat in your body, you need to take care of yourself, which she makes a really good point. And so I want to just be clear. Of course, I understand, and a lot of women don't necessarily want cellulite, and there is some genetic factors to it. So there's a little bit of cellulite that can be normal. But what I'm saying is, if it keeps getting worse, you can't just be like, well, like, I should just accept it and just like, this is just part of me, right? You need to step back and go, well, why is it? What is causing the cellulite? What is causing this worsening, dimpling, and like my skin not being smooth no matter what I'm trying to do? You want to make sure you get some guidance in that area. okay? So what is the science insight on this, okay? Estrogen supports satellite cell activation, okay? Satellite cell activation is extremely important for muscle growth. Satellite cell activation is the satellite cells that's going to donate the nuclei to the muscle to grow new muscle, okay? So estrogen supports satellite cell activation and muscle regeneration. So you can understand that when estrogen drops, that means satellite cell activity really drops off. And if satellite cell drops off, it's not able to build muscle. It affects, muscle has, I want you to think of it like sponge for carbs, for fuel. So the less muscle you have, the less sponge you have to absorb food, to absorb fuel. So this is why you will gain weight faster, because you don't have as much muscle to absorb that, right? So there's that. And as well, the drop in estrogen really affects mitochondrial function as well as collagen integrity. So you can understand why as you age, your skin starts to kind of look differently, right? You have less muscle ability, less ability to build muscle. You have poor mitochondrial function and potentially poor collagen integrity, right? So this all leads into this like, oh no, like I never realized like my skin like sags, or how come my body feels this way? I don't know. Does anybody feel that way? Like put below, anybody struggle with cellulite or like loose skin, or just feeling like that's something you can't get rid of, okay? Because again, a little bit is normal, but like excessive or it's getting worse, you need to pay attention to that. So let's talk about DNA. DNA, there are a number of genes that can influence how much muscle you retain and how easily you show definition, okay? So in this live, because this particular, just like the muscle sculpting masterclass, I took 3 hours. This one, I'm not going to go into too much specific, but the DNA, there are three gene coding, ACTN3, MSTN, and COL141. These gene coding really affect how much muscle you can build, okay? And how those gene expressions are going to come. Now, there's a lot with this, because I considered actually speaking about it on this live, and then I realized it's not going to happen. It's complex. It's either I do another big muscle sculpting masterclass or put it into a course or something like that, okay? A little bit loose skin is normal, but if it's getting worse and worse, like you're not improving it, then we need to look at some things. With the ACTN gene coding, the MSTN coding, these ones, I'm not going to go into what each one does in this particular live, but I am going to talk a little bit about what will give you a metabolic edge in regards to kind of this area of loose skin, muscle building, and all of that. What will help these gene codings better? One, progressive overload. I say this all the time. If you scroll back on my feed, you see me doing the row, you see me doing the chest press, because progressive overload is so important. You can't just do random moves. You can't just pick moves and randomly do things. You have to have a structure and sequence in your workout if you really, really want a good job of building muscle on your body. Progressive overload. Okay, I see so many women just go to random classes and random things, and they do this and do that and all of this mix, and they never really grow in their muscle. And it's kind of like, I'm glad they're working out. I'm glad they're moving. That's healthier than not moving. But it's kind of sad that you're not building the muscle you really want to build, because you're not actually progressively overloading. And if you watch my progressive overload live, if you want that live, I'm sure we can find it. It's the one I specifically was talking about, the row technique and progressive overload. So if you want that live, you can also put progressive overload below. Progressive overload, I know Kat says 100% here, is not just from lifting heavier. It is not just increasing reps, and it is not just increasing sets. So many people tell me, oh, I know how to progressive overload. It's just about increasing weight and increasing reps. And it's like, no. Yeah, there's a lot more to it. That specific live talks about it, and it talks about your technical execution is really important, and how you technically progress that is important in the tempo, the timing, the contractions, the eccentrics, the concentrics, all the types of things, and the angles and different things like that. Progressive overload is more than just saying, I'm going to go heavier, because if you go heavier, depending on your level, you could spike cortisol. You can impact DHEA and insulin growth factor. So it is not the only way. You have to understand where progressive overload comes in, right? That is why, and that will influence the ACTN3 gene, the MSTN gene, and COL141 gene. So this is why I encourage people to get on a program. They need to work on this program for a minimum of about 12, if not 16 weeks to get a really good handle on that. And they work in actually progressing those levels. You're going to see really good muscle growth. Okay. As well, we need to ensure we are getting enough protein. Okay. For this last point about cellulite, about muscle loss and all of that, of course, we know we need to get enough protein. And so you have to make sure that the protein amounts are sufficient. It's more than you think, but it's also not just protein, but like I said, you need your builders, your carbs, your fats, and all of that. Okay. Collagen is helpful. I know lots of people ask me about collagen. Yes, collagen is helpful. Keep taking your collagen. Collagen is very helpful. Like lymphatic movements, things like dry brushing, like I said, walking a lot, just movement. Movement will help a lot of lymphatic movement, and all of these types of signals will help encourage the expressions for those genes. Okay. So those are the 6 areas that is normal versus not normal. Like I mentioned earlier, I want you to think of everything. Everything has gene codings involved in it. But yeah, I don't want you to think, okay, well, my genes just says this or my genes says that. What I wanted you to understand is, yes, like my eyes are brown and black, like I'm short, I'm tiny, 5'2", these are my gene coding, right? There's certain things you can't change, but there is a lot of expressions of your gene you can change through lifestyle habits. And a lot of these things that I talk about, like the understanding of food, like, for example, Jane, your food right now, just based on what I'm even seeing, has a lot of information, right? Even though I know you're very careful about nutrition, it's like we're not aware sometimes. So we need to be super careful about nutrition. We got to be super careful about inflammation. We got to be super careful about our macros and nutrients. We got to be super careful about like muscle building and types of hormones being excreted about it. However, be careful about lifestyle habits, how our sleep, how our stress. So again, if you're listening to this and you're like, there's just so many things. Yes. And that's kind of always been my message, is that's why when doctors or somebody says to you, oh, you're just getting older, or it's just normal part of like menopause, and they brush you off. This is where you can be empowered to know, hey, I know what's normal and what's not normal. This is not normal. I need to get help here, or I need to get help in this area so that I can advocate for myself, because if you don't advocate for yourself, no one will advocate for you. So you can advocate for yourself. And that's why learning this, the lives are excellent for you to have an overview, but you need to understand the application area of it, right? And that's why I mentioned about Chiquita was saying she wants to learn about the next program. There's the Fierce Factor Formula group coaching. There's a transformation program. There's the Bio Revive system. There's, just a separate 21-day anti-inflammation. There's just the muscle sculpting masterclass. So if you want to learn on some of these, or you're like, I want to learn this, or just put help below or something like that, and we can reach out to you and just discuss with you what would help. Because the thing is, you have to have a very holistic view of understanding which one. And I'm going to say again, Phyllis is a great example. Phyllis is in a reverse aging program. We named it just for her because I actually am creating it just for her. Like for Phyllis, her situation is so different at 75 and what she's struggling with that I don't have a program specifically for her. I'm creating it as we do it. That's why she that's why I'm asking for feedback. I'm asking her, okay, you did this workout. Tell me what happens here. Tell me this. Because why do I do this is because at the end of the day, I really want you guys to try to remember that if you do generic type things, you're going to get generic results. If you go with general macros, you're going to get generalities. If you really want specific results, you need specificity in someone who's going to pay attention to your lifestyle, to the way you move, to the way you work out, to your response. You want someone that can actually sit with you and actually go kind of like, okay, I'm going to modify this exactly the way your body needs it. Awesome. So I hope this makes sense. And before I log off, I just want to ask for all of you, because this live is like what's normal, what's not normal. Was there anything that surprised you that you thought was normal but is not normal on this live? I'm curious. With periods, with belly fat, with like vaginal dryness, libido, all the things I mentioned. Was there anything specific that you were like, I thought it was normal, but it's actually not normal? I'd love for you to put it below, because it just, again, reinforces that we need to keep educating ourselves, keep empowering yourself. Sending you all lots of love. Make sure you add me as a friend on Instagram. Stay tuned for the big announcement coming in the next 3 weeks to a month. If you don't want to miss it, put announcement below. Okay, so I hope this added value, and sending lots of love to all of you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fierce and Fit Mentor podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the follow button on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, or wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If something in this episode resonated with you, please leave a review or share it with a friend who'd love it too. Your support means the world and helps us reach more amazing women like you. Until next time, stay fierce, stay fit, and let's keep building your most powerful self.